各位朋友，大家好，今天是2021年7月22日，这里是新西兰毛传媒的人物访谈栏目。近来，新西兰的网络电信欺诈活动越来越猖獗，不少华人都接到过欺诈电话。这次节目，我采访的是新西兰网络安全机构 Netsafe 的 CEO Marin Cocker 先生，请他介绍一下 Netsafe 是个什么样的机构，为社区提供哪些服务，以及为什么 Netsafe 要在下周举办网络安全周。好，有请 Marin Cocker 先生。
Netsafe is a not-for-profit that was set up nearly 20 years ago to assist people with anything that goes wrong online. And then over the years we've developed some services and we now have some contracts where we perform some functions for the New Zealand government. And again, those are to help people who are harmed online, if they're victims of bullying or scams or fraud.
What kind of help does your organization offer to the community?
Netsafe has three main roles that it provides for the community. We provide public education, so people can get resources from us, come to our website, all that is provided free. We also help people who are victims of online offences, so they can come to us and we have a case manager, a person who will assist them personally and help them resolve whatever it is they're dealing with. And then the last thing we do is more invisible, I guess, to the public, which is that we build relationships with the international ICT community so that when New Zealanders are getting into trouble on those platforms, we can get them resolution more quickly.
I know that Netsafe will have a Netsafe week. Can you tell me why the Netsafe having such an event?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Net Safety Week is that there's so many organisations and so many services associated with online safety in this country, and it can be really complicated to work out who to go to and who to seek advice from or support from at different times. And so we thought, it's really a good idea to raise the awareness of lots of organisations, including Netsafe, and give people confidence that there are places to go when something goes wrong. I think people in New Zealand have experienced some really high-profile online safety challenges, and they are also very heavily relying on the internet for all aspects of their life. And we felt that it was time to have a full awareness week to focus on safety online.
Do you have a lot of reports from the big communities? What kind of the scams people report the most?
Yeah, about 25,000 people come to Netsafe each year. So we have 25,000 reports of everything from bullying and harassment, hate speech, stalking, those kinds of behaviours, through to scams and fraud. And in actual fact, the majority of the reports that we receive are about scams and fraud and concerns in that area. And unfortunately, as people know, there's so many scams and so much fraud running at any time on the internet, and a small number of people are picked up and then lose money.
Do you have any reports from the Chinese community?
Yeah, we do receive reports from members of the Chinese New Zealand community, and there are often scams that are clearly targeting them. They are scams that use Chinese brands. They use Chinese embassy as part of the scam, clearly designed to target New Zealand Chinese community. So for the recent immigrant community especially, anything that is contact about travel, about immigration, about connection with the country they're from is more likely to resonate with them as real, and therefore scammers recognise that and they target that aspect of especially immigrant and new communities into a new country. People often ask me where scams are run from, and scams are run from all around the world. But the key thing for people is to know that the scammers are very unlikely to be either from New Zealand or from the country they're purporting to be from. So if they're saying, I'm calling from China because I'm a Chinese official, and I'm something to do with your immigration to New Zealand, they're unlikely to be either based in New Zealand or China. They're most likely to be based in an entirely different country, and all of that is completely made up.
It doesn't necessarily mean the scam is in New Zealand, even if the number is 0800.
No, a local phone number, it's possible to, they call spoof a phone number, so look like you're calling through a phone number. It's also possible that they've simply purchased local phone numbers but they call to those numbers and then to you from overseas. So they're not based locally, but the phone number might be a local phone number. If people report phone numbers, we then report them to the telecommunications companies, who will then block those phone numbers. That doesn't stop scammers, but it disrupts them and makes their life more difficult. So we do encourage people to report to us the phone numbers that are used as part of scams.
Can you please tell me some tips for online safety?
Yeah, look, the Online Safety Week has some themes. Because people are always asking us, practical advice. What should I do? What should I do differently? So if we get Net Safety Week, we've got 5 kind of areas that we've encouraged people to consider. The first is to have a conversation with family about safety and security. With so much going on in our busy lives, we often use technology very broadly, but we don't talk a lot internally about safety. So we really want people to have a conversation about each other's experiences and whether they feel that they've got safety and security under control. So that's the first thing, just have a conversation inside the family and see where people are at. The next thing we're really pushing at the moment is a focus on good digital citizenship. So we're seeing a lot of hate speech and aggressive behaviour online, and the law is not particularly clear about how to address especially hate speech. So the best way for us to deal with that is for the community to moderate speech, to express the way that have debates the way they would like to be debated with. There's no reason why people can't debate the most difficult topics in the world without being offensive, and we encourage people to do that. The third thing that we've focused on is misinformation. So there's a big rise in misinformation and fake news, as people talk about, and it spreads very quickly online, and people are not always aware that something is fake news, and they share it on and they become part of the problem as a result of that. So we created some resources last year which we're encouraging people to go and look at around misinformation, but that's something I really want to raise the profile of, because I think people are not really aware of how misinformation works online. We're also encouraging people to have a look at some pretty sensitive topics. So one of the reasons that quite a bit of harm occurs online is because people don't feel comfortable talking about very difficult things. And a good example of that is image-based sexual abuse, where people produce videos in intimate situations, and those videos are sometimes used later on as part of exploitation or blackmail. And people don't feel comfortable talking about it, people don't know what to do about it. That's what makes life even more difficult for the victims of that crime. So we want to try to encourage people to be able to talk about those kinds of things much more openly, and we created a resource called the Bare Facts with the Classification Office in New Zealand, really to encourage people to talk about it and bring it out of the dark, which is something that's so important in terms of addressing harms. The last 5th thing that we're focused on is really encouraging people to know their rights. New Zealand was one of the first countries in the world to establish a law around abuse and harassment online. That's the Harmful Digital Communications Act. Basically, that makes it an offence to create a digital communication that harms another person. And there are limitations to it. It doesn't cover everything, unfortunately, but there are definitely, when you are being abused and harassed online, in New Zealand, it is likely that is a breach of the law. And if you want to have something done about it, there are agencies that are paid by the government, like Netsafe, to do something about it for you. So we want people to know that, and we want them to be comfortable to come forward and access that service.
好，这就是本期毛传媒的人物访谈节目。新西兰网络安全周从7月26日星期一就要开始了。如果有华人朋友遭受网络欺凌、电信欺诈，请一定同新西兰 Netsfe 联络，电话号码0508-638-723。